Look, I think Reform are just all over the place on this. And, you know, we've had some really deeply worrying things from your leader, fawning over Putin,
He's not
a man who poses
Bridget,
a serious risk
We've been absolutely
to our country's security.
OK, so when that question... Yes, woman in the red sweater towards the back.
Are you happy as a government, then, to send our sons and daughters out to Ukraine to fight? To maybe come back in body bags?
Bridget, so what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has said is that we are willing to be part of a peacekeeping force in order to secure the long-term...
The BBC, the mainstream media, Labour and the entire Liberal establishment are now openly pushing for war with Russia. The scaremongering, warmongering propaganda is becoming more blatant. I watched Question Time last night and it was the worst full-blown propaganda I have yet seen. This woman asked if Labour were comfortable sending British troops to Ukraine to possibly come back in body bags. And even though the Labour MP answered implicitly, it was a resounding yes, they are more than happy. The entire audience was pro-war. Not one person in the audience, when the host asked for a show of hands, said they rejected sending British troops to Ukraine. The mendacious narrative pushed is, if we don't stop Putin in Ukraine now, he'll invade the rest of Europe, including Britain. The Reform Party's Richard Tice was on the show, and they all ambushed him, calling Farage a Putin lover. I hate to say it, but Tice was weak on this. He seemed uncomfortable with the topic. He let the liberal warmongers from Labour and the Green Party bully him a little bit, I felt. The leader of the Green Party was banging on about defending Ukraine and a united Britain. His party doesn't believe Britain should even have borders, yet he wants us to go fight Russia to defend Ukraine's eastern border. Tice should have highlighted the liberal hypocrisy. Labour, the Greens, the BBC, the mainstream media, the entire liberal establishment care more about the global liberal world order than they do Britain. And it is under that banner they want us to wage war with Russia. That is why I call this a holy war, a crusade. The globalists want Britain to be the epicentre of a global borderless landmass where their liberal values reign supreme. In their eyes, Russia threatens that fantastical vision of a utopia. The right-wingers also threaten that utopia because they want a strong Britain with national borders. That's why they are trying to silence everyone as Putin lovers. Starmer is the same as Blair, and Blair took us to fight a foreign war in Iraq while simultaneously dismantling Britain from within. The only difference now is we are doing it without America's help. Listen to this propaganda. It's terrifying.
I think what all of us desperately want to see, that has to involve Ukraine being a central part of any negotiations that follow. There can be no peace without Ukraine being a part of that. And, you know, we obviously have, as a country, really pushed forward with that. I am really proud of the leadership that our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has shown in wanting to bring together our European allies, in increasing defence spending, which is critical at this time, but also making sure that we do get all of those parties to the negotiating table. But we have to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position going into that. It's why we continue to back the brave Ukrainian people, why we back President Zelensky, who I think is a remarkable man, who has shown enormous courage in the face of Russian aggression.
So what... Adrian.
Well, what's been reinforced in the last week is that Trump's politics are driven by his petulance, not by principles. And we need to absolutely focus on making sure that the people of Ukraine and the peace that we need to see in Ukraine, a lasting peace, must be front and centre of any peace deal. It's got to be sustained and it's got to be negotiated. And my real worry about the direction that Trump has gone in, backed by far-right backers like Farage, is that they are supporting the dictator of Putin. They're not supporting the rights of people in Ukraine and the security of Europe. We need to make sure that Ukraine is not sold down the river here. And as we just heard from the audience, Trump is approaching this like it's a business deal. What can he get out of it? We need to stand up to that. And we have got chips, actually, that we can be putting here, because if Trump's so excited about the idea of a state visit, maybe the Prime Minister should be saying, OK, well, maybe you can do that, but it needs to be a joint visit with the war hero, President Zelensky, and then we'll show we're really on the side of Ukraine.
We've got a responsibility. We're all standing up as as a nation and as a parliament, we're all standing up for Ukraine. We've given huge support, quite rightly, when I drove a pickup truck full of medical supplies to Ukraine, handed it over to frontline brave soldiers, spoke to the people making the drones, manufacturing the drones, including children. You see firsthand how a whole nation comes together. But equally, when you see the mums in the cemetery weeping over the graves of their sons, their husbands, their brothers, you realise that actually that support that we have given has enabled, I think, peace discussions to commence. Peace discussions are always difficult. They're always tense, fraught with uncomfortable compromises. And what we learned last week,
President Trump is looking to pull the rug from underneath the people of Ukraine that you rightly went to support. And I know you supported them, Richard, but it must be uncomfortable for you then to hear your leader saying that Putin is the person he most admires in politics.
We all know Putin is a vile, monstrous aggressor. We all stand with Ukraine, but equally, it must be right to try for peace. I'm quite sure that we have no idea the pressures on world leaders like President Zelensky, the thousands of difficult decisions he has to make when people are dying.
So are you comfortable then, Richard, with the impression... Obviously, we do not know what the conversations between Donald Trump and President Putin have been.
What we do know...
But no, hang on, let me finish. But what appears is that the pressure is being applied to Zelensky and to Ukraine. Weapons are now being withdrawn, intelligence sharing has now been withdrawn. And as far as one can tell, there doesn't appear to be any pressure towards the Kremlin. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, let's wait and see. I think what we learned from last Friday, frankly, which was uncomfortable, regrettable, is peace negotiations like this, which are always difficult, should be conducted behind closed doors. You've got all the different moving parts on the table, and it's really hard. OK, well, let me ask you what I asked Bridget. Do you think Donald Trump is right to suspend intelligence sharing with Ukraine? Look, I think actually we've got to give maximum support, and we need to be in a position...
That's not answering the question.
It's not actually, and in a sense, we have to stand... We have to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. We know...
OK, so do you think Donald Trump is right to suspend intelligence sharing with Ukraine?
The most important thing, ultimately, is to get to a sustainable peace with enduring security guarantees.
Because you're not in government, so you're in a slightly different position to
But actually, we've all got a responsibility.
I get that. So,
we've all got a responsibility.
Well, let's be clear then. Is it that you have a view, but you, for legitimate reasons, do not want to share it?
I'm not going to criticise world leaders that are in a really difficult place, including the Prime Minister, who's had a really, really good...
Well, I'm asking you about Donald Trump.
No, but they're all world leaders who are trying to secure peace. And we all want that, but it's got to be a lasting, enduring peace with strong security guarantees, and we've got to have a robust, confident NATO.
You're not going to criticise President Trump for withdrawing the aid from the military aid from Ukraine?
But that's the point about responsibility, Adrian. We've got a responsibility to support all these world leaders in this difficult time.
We are absolutely clear about the threat that Russia poses to our country. We've seen it on our streets. We saw what happened in Salisbury. We see regular cyber attacks. We see challenge around our shores in terms of military aggression. We will stand up for the national interest against Putin, as we have done consistently throughout this process. But what I would just kind of point out, whilst I recognise what Richard has said, and I respect the views that he has shown, look, I think Reform are just all over the place on this. And, we've had some really deeply worrying things from your leader, fawning over Putin,
a man who poses a
serious risk to our country's security.
OK, so when you say fawning over Putin, so tell us how you mean.
He said he admires him. Who on earth admires Vladimir Putin?
Absolutely rubbish. We've been robust in our support for Ukraine ever since day one.
He did say he admired him as a politician.
Forget discussions a decade ago.
Who on earth admires a murderous dictator?
We've all been very clear that he is a brutal, murderous monster. And we absolutely stand with Ukraine, and that's everything that we stand for, alongside all the other parties.
Man there with the glasses.
Why should peace involve Ukraine giving up any of their sovereign territory? They've been invaded by Russia.
And I'm sure many Ukrainians are asking that question. Yes, woman in the red sweater towards the back.
Are you happy as a government then to send our sons and daughters out to Ukraine to fight? To maybe come back in body bags?
Bridget, so what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has said is that we are willing to be part of a peacekeeping force in order to secure the long-term... If a long-term settlement can be reached and we're a long, long way away from that, then we will play our part in that. But it has to be together with other allies. That's some distance off into the future. But there is no more serious or difficult decision that any politician can take than to commit our troops to military action. That is something that would have to be considered at the time, given the circumstances, as would be the case in any military deployment. But I completely recognise what you're saying and what that can mean. And I am incredibly proud of the contribution that our armed forces have played, as Keir Starmer said on Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions, serving and dying alongside our allies, including countries like the United States.
Let me just ask you then, since yours, should I take from your question that you wouldn't be happy for the UK to send troops to Ukraine?
I think we'd have to think very carefully about it. I mean, we've only got an army the size of, you know, spectators filling Murrayfield in Scotland. You know, it's about 70,000 in there, I think. So, you know, I don't know how we could send a force out there without the support of other countries and serious support.
It would have to be with other countries. I mean, our armed forces have been hollowed out. You're absolutely right. And that's why there is a real urgency about ramping up defence spending.
Let me just, is there anyone else in the audience is there anyone in the audience who's unhappy about the idea of sending troops to Ukraine? Yes, you have.
I just want to make the I'm ex-armed forces, so I'm an armed forces veteran, and I took absolute exception to what J.D. Vance said about our troops and the sacrifices that they made. But I'd also wish to make the point that everything that Donald Trump has done has advantaged Russia. And the quickest way to peace is for Russia to withdraw.
And would you, and the idea of sending troops to Ukraine, is that something you would support?
I think if you join the armed forces,
you have to be prepared to go.
You have to be prepared.
Anyone who would not want to see troops sent to Ukraine here? Just, I know